Today I have the unfair advantages of having a card here that tells me what time the talk is supposed to end, which is a great benefit to all beings throughout space and time, but particularly all here so gathered. So I think someone's been helpfully keeping those from cluttering things, but yesterday I was up here and I'm like, oh gosh, what time does the talk end? And you know what? It's the same time every talk. It's not like we try to change that or anything. And I'm not new to the environment, you know. But nonetheless, you know, get in the flow of things. I have no idea what time anything is, let alone when things are supposed to end or begin, or who am I and who are you and what's happening here. And so I'm grateful to have a little guide rail. Hey, isn't it all empty? Isn't it all nothing anyway? Yeah, and the talk ends at 3:40. Okay? And, you know, it's important for all of us because when you really let yourself sink into the deep end, you lose the bearing maintenance mechanisms of daily life. The samadhi comes on, the sitting takes hold. And not only do we maybe lose track of time, but you hopefully lose a little track of yourself. Wouldn't that be good? To just not have to track yourself for like a second here? Could we step off the gauges and the meters and the lap count and the pedometer and all these things? Let go of your need to gauge and to control and to make right. I mean, I understand measure twice, cut once. I really do. Plenty of time for that in the world, many times when that's exactly what's necessary. And yet here, there's kind of a highly structured abandonment. And they go together, this particular blend of yin and yang. Highly structured. The rows are like this, the robes are like that, the schedule is like this, not like that. The bell rings this way, not that way. Oh, but you said, yeah, I know, ring it this way, not that way. Just here we are. There's constant, it's not quite bumper cars, but they're guide rails. Sometimes it's bumper cars. But it's okay, because it's Buddhist bumper car, so it's fine. It'll just shake the sediment out of you. So, in terms of training, the experience and wisdom of the tradition is that to really let go, you have to have a very clear structure, right? And so, kind of job number one is to acclimate oneself to the structure. Not out of obsessive, compulsive, what have you, or a need to fix everything and finally be right or something, but just so you don't have to think about that. The idea is that you shouldn't need any ideas, right? It should just be like, look, we rise at this time, we sit at this time, we eat at this time. I don't think a single session has ever been to the millisecond perfectly worked out. That's fine. We have the guide rails, we have the guidelines, and just trust them. And if a little ebb and a little flow comes around, don't concern yourself with it. Leave that to the Tonto and the folks who have specific jobs, you know. And it's a particular point of training, just to say it aloud, that, you know, you, let us say, have some experience with a certain position or a certain role or a way things are supposed to be, and you come to session and that's not what's happening. But it's not your job to correct. That is a really tough practice for some folks, right? And I have to say, it's an important training in life. There's just a whole lot of things that we can't control or fix or manage or navigate, have you noticed? You know, so I can't tell you how many times I'd come into the Zendo. This is a long time ago, before there was many friends to help. But now we have lots of friends to help, so they get to have this grief. Welcome to it. But I would come in and I could sense so many things not correct. The zafu on the outside third row is askew. You know, the ebb and flow of the tempo of the chant isn't quite where it needs to be, and what is that person wearing? Oh my God! And on and on and on. This endless list of things that are really quite irritating, or at least noticeably not correct, let's say. And so there's no way that I could run around and scurry around and make everything be correct before we go ahead and proceed. It's not going to happen. I don't think a single session would ever actually get off the ground if we had that in mind. So, what is it that I can work with? What is my job? What is my practice, right? And learning to simply trust it's good enough. What's happening is right enough. And there are others who this is their realm, let them take care of it. And just trust the process, trust the group, trust your friends. Does it make sense? Okay. We're all here on common purpose. Every one of y'all is here, and every one of you doing the real thing. You are doing the work, no matter what your narration tells you about what a screw up you are, or how you'll never get it, or whatever, or how brilliant you are, and how amazing, and check me out, whatever. Don't pay attention to the stories too much. Don't be surprised that you have one, but that is not the currency that we use to trade with in the Dharma. The currency of the Dharma is something far more real, far more deep. It's something that you can never actually spend. You can share, but in the sharing, you find your own holdings simply increase. This is how the Dharma works. Now, we'll continue on with the Lankavatara Sutra. We're in the conversation around the Bodhisattva, and the sutra has just laid down the 10 Bodhisattva vows, which we talked about yesterday, and that's where we kind of left off. So the main idea of the sutra here, in this component, is to say that the Bodhisattva has this intention to see all beings realize themselves. It's not enough just simply for me to find some modicum of relief for myself. What about the others? Like, seriously. This is Bodhisattva heart, Bodhisattva mind. As long as space and time exist, and sentient beings in any realm or state suffer, so will I stay and be of use. This is my vow. Now another component is pointed out. Let's listen together. In the spirit of these vows, the Bodhisattva gradually ascends the stages upwards to the 6th. All earnest disciples, masters, and arhats, those are the categories prior to bodhisattvahood, have ascended thus far. But being enchanted, seduced, and captured by the bliss of the samadhis, and not being supported by the powers of the Buddhas, being entranced by the bliss of the samadhis. Mind your bliss now, there's different kinds. Being entranced, let us say, by the relief of a deep meditational state and the quietude that it brings. Say it like that. And not being supported by the powers of the Buddhas. Then they pass into their nirvana. The same fate would befall the bodhisattvas, except for the sustaining power of the Buddhas. Power of the Buddhas. By this, they are enabled to refuse to enter their nirvana until all beings alike can enter nirvana as well. The Tathagatas point out to them the virtues of Buddhahood which are beyond the conception of the intellectual mind. It goes on. So, one important character is this intent, this realization that other beings matter. And then there's this business of support by all the Buddhas. Now this this can be vexing. This can be difficult to relate to. What the heck does that mean? Does that mean the statue's going to come down and give me a little shoulder massage while I'm sitting there with an aching back? That would be kind of weird. No, it's not this kind of support. Now here we enter more into the realm of the, let us say, less intellectual components. Okay. The vows, frankly, should make sense. They're sensible, they are rational. This support from all the Buddhas gets a little bit more into the magical world, a little bit more into the imaginal, the artistic. What does it mean to invoke and to receive the support of the Buddhas? If the Bodhisattva ever expects, intends, and hopes to become Buddha and to be that level of useful, they better know how to invoke the support of the Buddhas and receive it. After all, that's the job description they're after. You want the job, you better know how it works. Now, some would say that this power of the Buddhas can be understood as an aspect of mind. Buddha, after all, is nothing other than awakened one. Awakened to what? Awakened to mind. Mind. So you could take it to mean that the mind itself is Buddha. Without the support of this Buddha mind, it would be impossible. And this is entirely correct. The more you practice earnestly and sincerely, and by the way, you can be earnest and sincere while you're thrashing around and having troubles and all these things. That's not a problem. But earnestness is sincerity. This is the most necessary ingredient. But you can sit there with this earnest difficulty and still Buddha mind is supporting you, whether you know it or not. After all, that difficulty is still an object of experience arising in the field of mind, is it not? Now, another way of seeing it is literally asking Buddha for help. Now, many of us are quick to poo-poo this, and for pretty good reasons, honestly. I mean, many of us in the room and listening have frankly had their fill of putting their power outside and beseeching some omniscient entity or something for favors or whatever. But I would invite you to explore a more mature version of what this could mean. It's not simply offer the Buddha some oranges and ask for the winning lotto ticket. I should probably try. But there is some way of reaching out. But it is a deeply human quality, is it not? This capacity to reach out is just as important as the ability to see within. One has to understand how to say, I need help. No one comes to realization but through understanding, I need help. For all the emphasis we rightly put on self-reliance, no one can do this for you. This is clearly critical and important, but understand there's a complementary antagonism to that, which is you cannot do this yourself. Sustaining power of Buddhas. Have you ever faced an issue you just can't resolve? Can I see a hand, if in case it might applies to anyone here? What do? You just say, oh, well, enough of that, I give up, perhaps. but what if it really matters? Like, what if it really matters? And there's nothing you can do. Not optional. Whenever this invocation is sent forth, it is received and subtly answered. Now, I don't have to put that on a spreadsheet or make some esoteric map. I suppose you could try. Not sure it would help. But I know the taste and the smell and the touch of this subtly answered business. There's frankly too many impossible occurrences that occur on a regular basis here. Is it not amazing? It's actually quite staggering to calculate the odds. And I bet you if we went around the room and I asked you to come up with maybe one example you might come to mind, most of us would have at least one or two, if not several. I see them daily in that Doksan room. It's astonishing. Can this be explained by pure logic and reason? Well, not by me, frankly. Maybe somebody I can. But I trust this thing that I can't put into a box. Not because, some Roshi somewhere told me I should, or else I'll go to some Buddhist hell or something. But because of my experience. There are some things, dear one, that I simply have no capacity to affect, that need to happen. So what does it mean to approach the altar in sincerity? Offer incense, offer intention, and leave it in the hands of Guan Yin. Like, is that a thing? Is that not just some theistic mistake? Or what are you doing here? Are you supplicating to Odin, asking for favors? What the hell's happening here? Perhaps the Delphi oracle is going to save you with some insight. You're going to barter for some favor from a deity. Don't. If you use it that way, this is incorrect. That deserves some chuckle. But there's an adult, mature, wholesome version of that that doesn't offend the intellect, but rather embraces the imaginal. And it's vital. It's as vital as any of the other upaya that we rely on so deeply in our training. Many people come into Zen training saying, well, I'm just here for the zazen, I'm not sure about that altar. My own first teacher, Toledo Roshi, was famously this way. He came in, Maizumi hired him to be the photographer. He was studying with a guy named Minor White, who, if you know photography, was a figure. And Dado came in and was documenting CCLA as it was in those days. And he wasn't there to be a student or to practice or anything, but he felt something in the space, and he felt something with the people, and he certainly perceived something with Maizumi Roshi. And so he found himself returning. Couldn't stand the liturgies. In fact, he couldn't stand them so much that during sesshin, which he started doing, during the liturgy he would sneak out and no one saw, so he thought. Right. But he would kind of sneak himself out and go smoke one. Literally. While everybody's doing their whatever that stuff is. And when that's done, go back and sit. I'm just here for the sitting. At that time, I guess we're in storyland here, but this is family stories. You should hear them. At one point, a much, much younger Bernie Glassman was there, and he was the Tonto. And he brought it to Roshi. Look, you know, that one tall guy, every time the liturgy comes in, he just ducks out and goes and smokes. What are we going to do about that? Maizumi said nothing. Leave him be. Why did Maizumi say that? What spreadsheet would that answer come from? Hint, it came from his Dharma eye. Oh yeah. His Dharma eye said, just leave that one be. Let it sit on the stove for a while on low heat. Don't perturb their process. This is very interesting because you would think, oh, now this is just wrong. And by the way, if you all cut liturgy and go smoke, I will not abide it. You will be in here for liturgy, just to be clear about that. Oh, you're getting ideas, are you? No. No. That was for Dido, not you. But the thing is, like, let this practitioner, let this person's process play out. If you think on it, did Dido from full knowledge decide, he wasn't Dido yet, he was John at the time. Was John omnisciently clear in his discernment about leaving the sendo to go and smoke? No. What was happening is his conditioning was driving him. He was getting dragged along behind the wagon of his assumptions and conditions up to that point. So even though it might look like this silliness is volitional, it is not. It's a pattern playing out, a karmic habit energy pattern. No more, no less. And there can be interventions that get done on these things, but it's very rare. The student has got to be in just the right place, and it can be excruciating getting there. For whatever reason, Maizumi's Dharma eye said, not yet. Let this process play out. And so it did. Do you think Dido was helped by the power of the Buddhas? Oh yeah, I'd say so. Now, interestingly, same person, sometime later, very, very different. Very, very different. We don't cut liturgy and go smoke. We practice liturgy. That happened later. What's the difference? Is it because Dido did it right? No. He sincerely engaged to the edge of his practice. And at that time, that's what it was. Pretty modest edge, honestly, but there it is. And this sincerity at the cliff's edge is all the difference. It's enough about old tales of people who've passed away. What about us? Oh, I've got many stories. So many, so many. I came into training with so much baggage. Like, who doesn't? But relentlessly, what I found is that the Buddhas are there to help, however they show up. It can be the refreshing breeze on the skin and the break. I remember one time it was a deep winter session, much like we are now, although it was no sunlight, and they had these lights outside, not unlike the ones we do, and there was this little space, and I was just going out of my skin. I forget what the issue was I had concocted for myself at that time, but there was something going on. And oh, it had a hold on me. And sitting in the Zendo just felt like sitting in boiling water. I just couldn't stand it, but I stood it. But as soon as that break happened, I'm out of that Zendo as fast as I can get out. I went downstairs and went outside, ironically again where the smoking people were. This unintended theme of the day. I don't smoke often. I do have a cigar once in a very blue moon. But, anyway, I went out there, and it was the most gorgeous thing. I can still hear and smell and feel. This is upstate New York, and there was this amazing snowstorm happening, this deep, deep blizzard thing going on. And the way the lights were, I could look up, and it was this vast field of black. And then suddenly, as the snowflakes came into the area where the lights were, they burst into existence to my eye. And then they fell down in this most beautiful array. And I just stood there captivated by the sight of these universes appearing and then falling and then dispersing one after the next. And the sounds of the wind, and the taste of the air, and the beauty of these snowflakes. Where did my drama go? I went out there because I was like scalding. I couldn't stand it. This is wretched. What am I going to do? Poor Pookie. And really, I was earnestly, that's where I was. And yet somehow encountering these sense objects of sight and smell, and taste, and touch. Wow, dude. What about the support of the Buddhas? How is it that the Buddhas came to support me? Or more importantly, how did the Buddhas come to support you? Sometimes not so pleasant ways, but always with compassion, always with clarity, and always exactly what's needed. Whether I can recognize it or not is kind of beside the point. Hopefully I can recognize it. Sooner or later I will. But what's necessary in training is to trust the process and pay attention to what's going on. Really pay attention to what's going on. And I appreciate that it might be the last thing you want to do. But that's just your ego talking. That's not your Dharma eye talking. If you have to pick between the two, go with your Dharma eye. What does your deepest and highest self bring forth? Lean into that, trust that. The Tathagatas point out to them the virtues of Buddhahood which are beyond the conception of the intellectual mind. Tathagata means thus come one. One who merges with reality, expresses reality, thusness, suchness, reality itself. One who has attained themselves as the cosmos. The Tathagatas point out to this bodhisattva the virtues of awakening which are beyond the conception of the intellectual mind. Beyond what the intellectual mind can grasp, control, Not beyond the Dharma eye, by the way. Not at all. Don't confuse. The intellectual mind is beautiful and lovely and incapable of perceiving Buddha nature. Dharma eye perceives it just fine. This is why the training is so important, to pay attention to the body. This capacity to locate the weight of your awareness in your kinesthetic and somatic experience, as opposed to living in the drama, living in the mental landscape without knowing it. But it's not just that. It's not just retract from ideas into your body. That's a stage of training. Because you see, this Dharma eye needs to see, it needs to open, it needs to connect with true reality. And if that sounds real exotic and esoteric to you, don't worry about it. I promise you it's not. To the intellectual mind, yes, but to your Dharma eye, when that moment comes, it's as obvious as the feeling you get when you hear an infant laugh, or the grief you feel when a loved one passes away. It's that real, it's that intimate. The Tathagatas point out to them virtues of Buddhahood which are beyond the conception of the intellectual mind. Strangely enough, the intellectual mind will keep trying to reassert itself. That's not a problem, really. That's what the intellect does. It intellects. The ear hears, the eye sees, fire is hot, water is wet. Your thinking brain is going to think about it. We don't want to find that part of the brain and excavate it and throw it away. No, thank you. But you want to be able to place it in the correct context of your own experience of the Buddha Dharma. Then there's no problem. And they encourage and strengthen the bodhisattvas not to give in to the enchantment of the bliss of the samadhis, but to press on to further advancement along the stages. This is the don't be satisfied maneuver. And it's a good one. It's a deeply important and necessary ingredient on the path. And this is common in many fields of endeavor. Some fields of endeavor, good enough is good enough. It's good enough, it's fine. But if you're really going to get deep into whatever the thing is, in my case, let's say jazz guitar, it requires a perpetual dissatisfaction. This is necessary. Or if it's not dissatisfaction, at least it turns into a clear sense of what could be better. Is it not so? This is what gets the artist to keep exploring the art. How do you do it in a way that doesn't hurt yourself? So here, the Buddhas are providing wise counsel to the person at this stage. Well done. Well done. You begin at long last to settle down somewhat. Good job. And then, well done, well done. You're really settling in quite a lot, aren't you? Fantastic. And then it goes from well done to, don't be satisfied here. Don't make a nest. And the teacher can actually turn into, not quite an opponent, really, but an antagonist, let us say, in the journey. Oh, can't we just stay here? This is really nice. No, we can't. The quest lays in the next mountain range. Let's go. Sometimes the help of the Buddhas is all encouragement and grandmotherly kindness, and sometimes it's fierce. But it's always to the benefit of the practitioner. You know, I can remember times where I would bring examples of my playing into my teacher, and I thought it was really great, and they would shred it. And they were right. Oh, God, they were right. And I could never unhear their critique in my playing, and it was a great wound, and I kind of resented them. Especially because they were right. And so there's this kind of, it's an awkward adolescent phase, let's say, where, that irritation is necessary, because to a lot of people, they would never know that there's anything that could be improved. This sounds great. Well, there are levels. And that's something of what the sutra is saying. Humanity had noticed samadhi states long before Shakyamuni Buddha came up and started hanging out. There's nothing new in that. His dissatisfaction with it and his desire for something more are essential ingredients into the practice of the Buddha Dharma. Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be beyond dissatisfaction and free of attachments? Interesting question. How do you see it? Here, the Tathagatas show up and say, don't be satisfied. There's more. And I have to say that having the incredibly auspicious causes and conditions that allowed me to be in contact with someone who could actually credibly give me that feedback when I desperately needed it, even if I didn't really like it, was absolutely essential. And after a very short time, any resentment towards this guidance is just obliterated by the fruits of what happens when you pay attention to it. Lo and behold, my rhythm was kind of off. And lo and behold, now it's less so. If the bodhisattvas had chosen to enter their experience of nirvana at this stage, they would have done so without the sustaining power of the Buddhas. There would have been the cessation of all things, and the family of Tathagatas would have become extinct. Can you imagine if the practice of the Buddha Dharma went extinct 1,000 years ago? Not much scares me, but that scares me. That thought that if it could have gone extinct back then, I mean, the Dharma itself is going nowhere, but the practice of it. And that all those lives who did the work and dealt with the things made it possible for me to sit before my teacher and receive the guidance and to do my own work then, in the context of noble friends and lineage. It's just, I cannot fully express the gratitude. It's not possible. All I can do is live out of it. The scary part is to realize that, you know what? It's our turn now. What if everyone who practiced now decided, good enough? Well, according to the Lankavatara, the cessation of all things and the family of the Tathagatas would go extinct. So there's kind of a sacred not being satisfied, a very holy and important and critical willingness to lean in, not away from. take up that vow and ask for help. Offer some incense to Tara. Talk with your noble friends. Connect with the guides of our way and our tradition. Ultimately, though, you alone must do this, and you will, and you can. For the sake of all beings throughout space and time, may it be so.
To